Hey everyone, today we're going to be covering the 2004 to 2009 Toyota Prius rear HD lift spring install. This process would only be necessary if you decided to upgrade to our HD rear springs instead of the rear lift spacers. These springs would go in place of the rear spacers. If you've previously purchased one of our kits, you would remove the top strut spacer and install the rear HD lift spring in its place. We're going to start out by using a paint pen or a marker and marking the top and bottom of the strut just to make sure that we get the proper orientation when we reassemble it. These are side and rotation specific, so it is important that you get the right orientation when you put these back together. You will need a spring compressor in order to complete this process. You can rent one of these at any auto parts store. Typically they rent them out even for free with a deposit, or you can buy one on Amazon or eBay for between $20 and $40. They're pretty basic, just like these ones are. These are just off the shelf, standard ones you get at an auto parts store as well. So nothing fancy or special here. They do the job, but they are definitely a little sketchy at the same time. So definitely be careful, wear safety protection, eyeglasses, etc. I found this to be pretty much the easiest orientation to get them apart and reassembled. You're going to want to pay attention to how the spring compressor is installed with the nuts on bottom here on the left hand side and the end of the bolt on the top right coming out that side. You can only have it on each end of the strut because of the way that they're shaped. If you try and put it in any other orientation, then it's going to hit that top plate. So pretty much exactly like it is in this video is the only way that it will work. Once you've got the spring compressor orientated properly and finger tight, you can go ahead and cinch them down, ideally with an impact like you see here. You're going to want to go side by side, little by little, as opposed to cranking down just on one side and then switching over to the other. This helps keep that spring straight as opposed to getting a big arch in it and potentially popping those spring compressors off. Once you've got the spring compressed enough that you see some tension come off the top plate, you can go ahead and remove the nut that holds that top spring retainer on and then disassemble the strut. When disassembling the strut, I like to try and keep everything in the same order that it was taken apart in and kind of lay it out as best as possible so that's easy to go back together. Now that you've got everything disassembled and laid out, you can go ahead and take the tension off of the spring compressors. Again, I like to go side by side, little by little, as opposed to doing all on one side and then all on the next. This definitely helps the disassembly process. Once you've got your old spring removed, you can go ahead and grab your new rear HD lift spring and your strut, inserting the strut into the center of the coil, making sure that the pigtail on the bottom is properly clocked and indexed so that it bottoms out on the bottom spring retainer properly. Then you can go ahead and grab your coil spring compressors and install them in the exact same way that we did for the disassembly process, making sure that they're in the same orientation and on proper sides. Once you get these installed and finger tight, you can go ahead and grab your impact and tighten these down to the point that the coil compresses. Again, you're going to want to go side by side, little by little, as opposed to torquing down all on one and then all on the other. This will help keep that coil from arching too much and keep it as straight as possible. Once you've got that tightened down, you're going to want to grab the rest of the components, installing them in the same order that they came off. When you install the spring retainer on top, you're going to want to spend a little bit of time, make sure you get the pigtail properly seated. If this isn't seated properly in the spring retainer, it can sit crooked, so it's important to make sure that this goes on straight and true. Once you've got everything installed in the proper orientation and true and square, you can go ahead and tighten down the nut that holds on the top spring retainer. After this, you can go ahead and loosen up your coil spring compressors. Same thing, I like to go a little bit side by side, making sure that it stays true and square during the install process when all of the tension is getting put back onto the coil. And with that, you're officially done with one coil. Now it's off to the other side and then off to the races.